this lesson, we're going to grab some of the hardware we made earlier from one of the layers, and we're going to bring it from the hardware layer and put it on the surface of the boiler. So what we want to do, go down to the hardware layer, unhide it, go to the front of the train where we had all the hardware. Let's grab F3. Let's grab the rivet and the nut and bolt, right click, clone to copy. And now let's go up to the boiler level, make it active, plus sign to add that to the level. Let's hide the hardware layer. Okay, back up to boiler. We can close the layer manager. Let's just drag these way to the back, all the way back here. Perspective zoom. Okay, and let's pull them out so we can see them without any obstruction. There we go. Okay, first off, let's just grab that rivet on its own. What I want to do is, let's move it down, pull it in this way. There we go. Zoom in. It's close to the surface. Let's scale it up a little. Use the scale tool. I think it should be bigger, somewhere along that scale. That looks good. Okay, shift it down. And from this point, this hose right here, this steam line, from that point forward, along this bottom surface, we want to add some of these rivets. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to shift, drag. I can do it as an instance. Just move it down. Zoom in a little bit, Z. That looks good. Repeat the function with two of them selected this time. As instances. Down, forward a little. Okay, let's get all four. We're going to make one long line of them. Instance again, shift drag them to do that. F3 to see what we're doing. Let's select them all again. There we go. Okay. Now I'm going to go downward. About that spacing. As instance is fine. I don't think they all need to necessarily be lined up in perfect rows, so let's just shift it a little bit. Let's do that again. And let's kick them back a little so that they're not in a perfect pattern. I like that. One more time. Okay. That's good. Okay, let's see how that looks with F4. Okay, so now what we're going to do is left viewport. F3. I'm going to select the boiler, the rear section. Let's just marquee around some of this stuff here. Let's deselect the steam lines. And now we should have, let's Alt and Q. P for perspective. I'm zooming in. I'm going to shaded. I'm selecting the boiler section and invert the selection with Control and I. There we go. And now what I want to do is check. I think some of these aren't actually intersecting. The first two rows look okay, so let's deselect some of these. Just like that. Marquee, select marquee. Now we'll just nudge those in a little bit. If we need to rotate, we can rotate just like that. That was local, which worked well on that first row. Let's deselect this row. Let's move these back with the move tool, W. Shift them back. E for rotate, it's still set to local. There we go. See how that looks? F4. Looks good. They shouldn't all be perfect. They're rivets. They've been hammered and stuff like that, so that looks good. Let's exit isolation. Zoom in a little bit. Take a look. And that looks good to me. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grab that bolt that we brought in. I think it's around there. Zoom in. Okay. Let's scale that up. R for scale. Let's make it almost as big as these rivets. And let's move it to the front of that row of rivets. Somewhere around here. Okay. Drag it down. Drag it in toward the surface. There we go. Let's grab this back section. Hold Control while you have that bolt selected. Click on that boiler section and let's Alt and Q to isolate. Click out an empty space to deselect. Let's select the bolt again. Zoom in. Let's move it out so we can see it. Right now it's inside there. There we go. That looks good. And what I want to do, I'm going to shift and drag that up. Could do it as an instance. Let's grab both. Control click to do that. I had one selected, control and clicked on the next. I'm going to move these back so they line up. Nudge them a little. F3, control click on these two bolts. Okay, let's move this forward. Just like that as an instance. Move them down. Let's go down to the bottom here, grab these two. Zoom in. Let's make sure that we're not getting away from the surface. And we are a little, so these two right here need to be rotated. Local is good. That works. Let's do it for the next two. Rotate them, and W for move. Let's move them back, just like that. Shift and drag them down. As an instance is fine. That looks good. Let's align them to those rows there. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to continue this, so shift down. Okay. Manually move them a little bit, just like that. Okay, I'm going to select this boiler section, Control and I to invert the selection. Make sure there's nothing else out that shouldn't be, that's fine. And let's just shift and drag this whole selection forward like that, as an instance, as a copy. Let's shift that down with the move tool. We're going to come down a little bit, zoom in, make sure nothing is floating off the surface. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to scale locally, local, and let's just do that. These should be a little smaller than the ones behind them. That's perfect. Deselect. Okay, let's exit isolation. P for perspective. Let's zoom in and get a good look. That looks pretty good. That's kind of what they do. They're kind of erratic placement, but that's how they look in the reference. Depending on your reference, you can do more or less and work with it from there. I'm going to stop right there, and what we're going to do is next up, we're going to build these little ladders that go alongside of the front of the boiler. I guess it's so they can access some of the parts, and that'll be in the next video. So let's pause the video.